everyone. Thank you for joining me, PL McMillan, for this wonderful book launch party for the one, the only, the Patrick Barb, whose collection is coming out in just a few days. And that collection is the children's horror Cursed Episodes for Doomed Adults. Oh, look at that. Nice. And so this upcoming collection releases July 16th. Ooh, memories. Yay, look at me go. And we are here to celebrate it, essentially. So hello, Patrick.
Hello. Hi, everyone else, for joining us this evening. Happy to be here. Happy to be talking about the book.
Yeah, super exciting. I love the color. Obviously I added that. That's Patrick. This,
No,
I
no,
guess,
no.
yeah.
That's the fold in, actually. If you get the book, not
If you get the special
the
edition, you
special
get,
edition, you
yeah.
get my haunted demon face.
Yeah. You have a copy with you. You want to show it off?
Yeah, it's proof.
There we go.
Paperbacks are um, the pre-orders for paperbacks are up on Amazon now, along with the ebook. Should be on Barnes and Noble, all those other places as well. Um, Here in the next few days as well. It should be out at least by the on sale day.
Yeah. And of course, if you want a copy, there is a link in the chat if you're here live, or in the description below if you're watching this on the YouTube video. And now I'm going to introduce our guest of honor, which is you, Patrick, because obviously I'm the host, so you're the guest.
Oh
That's
yeah.
usually how it works. Patrick Barb is an author of weird, dark, and spooky stories, hailing from the southern United States and currently living, and trying not to freeze to death, with his wife, 2 kids, and naughty but lovable puppy in St. Paul, Minnesota. As a writer, his short fiction appears in Best Horror of the Year, Volume 16, Night Script, Diabolical Plots, and Cosmic Horror Monthly, among other publications. His longer works include the novellas, and I always mess up this title, so let me try, Gargantuanas, Ghost. Ooh, look at that.
Added in one.
Turn and The Nut House, coming soon in a collected edition from Undertaker Books. The novelettes, Helicopter Parenting in the Age of Drone Warfare, which I loved, and So Quiet, So White, and Split Screen Volume 3 from Tenebrous Press, and his debut dark fiction collection, Pre-Approved for Haunting. Barb is an active member of the Horror Writers Association and a full member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. Hello again, Patrick Barb.
Hello again.
Yeah,
You nailed it.
so
You get that Gargantuanas
yes,
ghost on the first
I
try.
did it. I did it. I did have to
Kudos
pause
all around.
beforehand and like prep myself for it. But so for today's event, we are doing some exclusive activities. Patrick is announcing his OnlyFans and we'll be linking it in chat. Just kidding. We'll be doing 3 giveaways, an exclusive author interview in which I rake Patrick over the coals. He'll be doing a live reading from his collection, The Children's Horror, and we will be doing a Q&A, so get your questions ready. Feel free to ask the weirdest questions you can think of to really make Patrick sweat, because he's an expert now. He's used to me. He's been on my podcast, the Dead Languages podcast. He's used to being harassed, and he actually kind of loves it.
Which makes it as uncomfortable as possible. We all
Yes.
have a good time here.
Absolutely. So let's just start off with a bang. Everyone has a really good chance of winning a copy.
Odds
Because
are very much in your favor.
yes, because we have 3 copies to give away. And how it works is I have a little wheel on my browser and it'll spin. If you win, I will be contacting you after the event with the email that you used to sign up for the event. And I'll put you in contact with Patrick, who will put you in contact with the publisher, who will ask for your shipping address, and who will ship you a copy of the book. Huzzah! Say huzzah, Patrick. Be excited.
Ah, there we go.
There we go. Gosh darn. Okay, everyone. Are you hyped? It's a very
Get those
quiet
drums
chat.
going in the chat.
Yeah, show me the drums in chat, everyone. I need to see the drums. I need validation. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Christy. Christy Nogle also in chat. Another amazing Stoker winner author. Thank you, Grace. Thank you. Hello, hi. Okay, I'm gonna hit the wheel. Okay. Spinning, it's spinning. And our winner is Hello Hi. Hello Hi.
All
Whoever you
right.
actually are. So if you could do me a huge favor, and if you don't want to say your name, you can private message me in the chat. Can you let me know your name so I can get your email? Because I don't know, well, unless last time I checked, no one named Hello Hi actually signed up. So you can change it to yes, thank you. Yeah, just let me know and I will get to you after. But congrats, Hello Hi.
Congrats. I like to assume that the dog is who won.
Yes.
It is a dog who is messaging, and I very much look forward to them, the puppy enjoying the book.
Yes. Cutest puppy, please post yourself reading the children's horror on social media. We love a good
Absolutely.
dog pic. All right, so now it's time for the interview. So, dearest Patrick Barb, um, what is one writing habit that you swear by?
Good question. I think just keeping a regular schedule is my biggest. I write every day at around the same time, for about the same amount of time. Do like 30 minutes before lunch, and then I do 30 minutes before the kids get home. And it can vary how much I get done in that time. A lot of times sometimes I'm revising what I've written the session before, and then kind of moving forward. Sometimes there's like work things that are going on that can be distracting. Um, sometimes it's like emails and everything. I used to do 3 sessions. I would do it like when the kids were in bed, but I've since stopped doing that and kind of giving myself a chance to kind of relax because I wasn't really getting as much done. But yeah, keeping to those two writing times, doing about an hour of work Monday through Friday, and then taking off for the weekends has really been the best thing in terms of like
Mm.
productivity. And I find that like once you start being productive, once you start like getting a lot of stories written, getting a lot of like words down on the page, you finish things. And when you finish things, you get them to a point where they're almost good enough to maybe share them with other people. And then you do send them out, and things kind of go and accumulate from there. So I'd say that's probably the number one thing for me, just keeping a regular schedule and just every day, every weekday, just meeting those time slots.
On average, how many words do you think you get done per week?
Per week, it can be as much as like 5,000. Like if I get 1,000 a day,
Oh,
but
gosh
usually it's
darn,
more
yeah.
like somewhere between 2,500 to 5,000, because it's either going to be like a 500 word day or a 1,000 word day. Uh, and my wife wants to know if anybody needs anything from Target. So if anybody has any needs from Target, put them in the chat. We will hook you up as well.
Okay, I really like their face masks. So if I could get like, maybe a nice soothing face mask,
Yeah.
from
Okay.
the beauty section, that would be great. Yeah, just let her know that, yeah.
Tap 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 tap.
Thanks, Mrs. Barb.
There you go.
Okay, to you, what is the hardest thing about being a writer?
The harassment from PL McMillan is probably the
I
number
know.
one. But that's a unique problem for me. So I don't like
Absolutely. Well,
um,
Carson too.
in Carson. Yeah,
Yeah.
more so Carson. Really, he just kind of
I
came
mean,
in
he's
and
asking
was,
for it.
well, he dresses the way he does with that vest and everything. Hard to resist.
Patrick
Um,
Barb canceled
and just
2025.
the canceling event of the
Yeah.
evening. Um, no, I think the hardest thing is just finding a way to feel like you're getting done as much as you want to get done. I talked about just a question ago about writing every day and getting time in and getting stuff published, and I've got books and stories published, and there's always going to be like that one next step or the thing where you feel like, oh, I could have gotten this done, or I could have done this. And I feel like the only way you can really deal with it is just to kind of set those doubts aside and kind of just focus on the work and just getting it done, and going a story at a time, paragraph at a time, word at a time. But that's always really kind of my big thing, is like, what else can I get done? And feeling like there's more and more and more to do.
And that's a good lead into the next question. What does success mean to you as a writer?
I have sort of had different takes on this as I've kind of gone through the writing journey of the last like 4 years, let's say. And at first it's like you compare yourself, you're always going to compare yourself to other people. Like I know people who've been published in places where I would love to be published, who then come to me and say, you did this and you've gotten this done and I'm jealous of you. And it's like, okay, we're all jealous of each other. We all want everything. I feel like a lot of times. And all that means is like success is continuing to, for me, it's like continuing to break new ground, not staying in place, not really being complacent in where I'm publishing. I will submit to new small publishers. I'll submit to new magazines and websites if they're, seem to be on the up and up. I've had a
Which is a
collection.
lot harder to trust in nowadays.
It is a lot harder. It's just,
Yeah.
well, a lot of times you can just kind of sit back and give it a year and see who's still standing a lot of times. So that's always a good trick.
Yeah.
But really, there's like, I had a collection that was out this past September, pre-approved for haunting. And then the opportunity came out to put out the children's horror, which is the kind of a very different thing. And had to go, we had to do that too, because it's like, this is something different while still being a short story collection. So I think just constantly moving and creating for me and creating things that people seem to still be interested in, um, either paying me for or reading or paying me for and reading. Then that's kind of like where I'm targeting, I guess, these days.
No, that's fair. I definitely know what you mean. Like, sometimes one of the hardest things, like, if you're struggling or like you haven't gotten anything published for a while and you see everyone getting published around you and you're like, man, I'm really not doing anything lately. I've been feeling that lately myself.
Yeah.
So I went through like
Well,
a slump. Yeah.
I've been working on a lot of longer things. These the stories in the collection here were written mostly in like 2021, 2020, some of them. And so like these are like older short stories and I've
Oh,
had a
so
lot
you're
of
saying
them.
they're stale?
No, they're fresh. They're super fresh. I freshened them up before they got published. Don't worry about
Little
that.
Febreze.
Yeah, just a couple of
Yeah.
spritzes of the Axe body spray. There you go. I don't wear Axe body spray for anybody who would. Don't repeat those vicious rumors. Um, I've been working on a lot of longer stuff. Doing like working on a couple novels and a novella right now that I'm working on. And so I see a lot of people in like writing groups that we're in that are working on like short stories and they're still submitting to every market and everything. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Do I have any stories? No. Do I have time to write one?
Yeah.
Also, no. Um, so, I think after these next couple of projects I'm working on that are long form, I might dip my toes back into the short story pool and see how the water is again.
Yeah, I'm in the same place where I'm working on a lot of longer works, and I'm in that place where like I'm like I have nothing like technically coming out because I'm working on all these things, and I'm like so annoyed, like shaking my laptop, like why can't you produce faster?
Yeah, no, I know it's just like there's only so many hours in the day that you can work.
Now, here's a spicy question, and I normally I feel like people who've seen a lot of these launch parties, like if I don't know the author, I tend to do like pretty standard questions, but me and P Barb go way back. So I'm gonna
And
ask you,
I'm an
yeah,
easy interview.
yeah.
I like to think
What
pretty
is
easy.
one thing you dislike about the writing industry and wish could change?
That's a good question. That I know I had this question ahead of time. I still
Yeah.
paused. I'm
Yeah, I'm
like,
like surprised that you have to think about it.
um, I I think for me, a lot of it has to do with making work accessible to the largest possible audience. I think you look at things like the way that social media has kind of shrunk from the reach that it originally had. Like Twitter, X is not the same platform that it was before. Um,
Hmm.
I think there is a more of a tribalism that goes where you're having people kind of uh, sectioned off into like different camps and different websites and different things, but no real way to kind of get people to find new work and new authors, different voices outside of what they're already looking for. A lot of times, I try to share what I'm reading or share the things that I've bought, because I want people to like see, what's out there. There's a lot of different writers out there, and I love to hear recommendations. The column that I do at Shortwave Magazine called Your Favorite Author's Favorite Author, where I interview an author from today about like who their favorite authors are, because I feel like there is such a need to expand our horizon, really. Especially in like horror, a lot of times people can kind of get stuck and say like, I like this type of horror and nothing else. So I really feel like the way it used to be with social media, it felt like there was more of a wider audience that could be reached. And now that's not quite as true anymore. So I think, engaging in conversation, telling people what you're reading, talking about it, listening to what other people are reading is really, maybe like not a perfect solution to that problem, but it is kind of the best we have at the moment. And also I just like to hear what people are reading. Like I'd like to talk about books and I like to talk about writing, and the more of that that's going on, the less just like silly bullshit, I guess there is in online spaces, which will never go away and shouldn't. So I feel like it's part of the
Writers are
DNA.
such drama queens.
You gotta love the drama. I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
or the comedy, depends on your perspective on it sometimes, I guess.
XO Gossip Girl. But no, I definitely see that. I'm on a lot of the Reddit the subreddits for horror books. And a lot of times people ask for recommendations and you always see like the same names over and over again. And they're usually big names like, oh, you should try Stephen King and blah blah blah. And it's just I'm always so surprised how little like indie authors are mentioned, because you think like there's only so much Stephen King out there and like he's so famous. Like I guess I'm just surprised that a lot of the readers don't seem to recommend beyond like these big names that are, I mean, it's like it's like, oh, what do you like to drink? Well, have you tried water?
Yeah, yeah. So the thing is that like there are some great that I've found. Maybe I was lucky. Reviewers in like the horror and weird spaces who are really trying to sample widely and are really trying to get the word out about new authors and new books. My hat, if I had one, I don't wear hats, but if I did, it would be off to them. Because that's kind of like, I know your co-host on the Dead Languages, Mr. Carson himself, he likes to say that all us writers are just reading our own work, but
Yeah.
there are some people out there who are just readers, and I love them that they're just out there reading and sharing and talking about the work, because I think that's a huge part of like the success of anything is not just having the people making the product being the ones who are buying the product. We need to have people who are strictly consumers and who want more. And there are some folks that are out there for it, and I'm all for it.
So if you don't listen to the podcast that I co-host with Carson Winter, one thing that he often says is horror writers, like there's no readers. It's just horror writers reading other writers' stuff. And he especially says that he's like, nobody buys collections unless they're writers.
So I'm counting on all my reviewer friends out there to prove Carson wrong
Yeah.
and spread the good word.
Also, Grace says in the chat that she loves the spicy questions. So feel free, if you have a spicy question, there will be a Q&A at the end. So you can,
Spice it up.
yeah, spice it up. So let's, this event is here to celebrate your collection, which no one will read but another writer. Just kidding. That's something Carson would say. So why don't you tell us about the collection, keeping it spoiler free since it's not out yet?
Sure. The Children's Horror is a 10-story collection of stories that were written inspired by the kids' TV shows and programming that my kids. Oh, my dog is here to visit with us.
Yay, puppy.
Jennifer's here.
Hey,
Um,
Juniper.
that were inspired by the TV shows and programming that my kids were watching during the kind of height of the pandemic and lockdown. So my kids were just home. Obviously, we're all home. They're watching a lot of shows. They were at the time 4 and 1. So it's a mix of stories inspired by, but not really for legal purposes. Um, Pokemon, PJ Masks, Baby Shark, Mickey Mouse. Definitely not that one. Definitely not inspired by Mickey Mouse. I know how that. And just kind of taking these in very weird and strange and frightening and unsettling directions. Um, and there's a frame story at the beginning that I'll be sharing a part of here tonight. And then there's these stories that are inspired by the more kind of lighthearted fare and turned in a darker direction.
As it does, when you write horror, or if you have children. I don't know. I don't have any. But I mean, you did say that they're horror. Ha ha
That's right.
ha.
That is the children's horror. Oh, we got just
So,
James in the chat there.
yeah, we got Just James of the horror. You were just speaking about book reviewers, and now we have Just James here.
That's right.
There you go. They're
Shout out to the
summoned.
book reviewers.
Yeah, hi, Just James. Okay, so you talked about the inspiration of what came for the theme of the collection, which kind of led into my next question. So, which was what was the inspiration of the theme, but here we are. So I'm gonna instead ask you for my favorite stories within the collection, what
Okay,
inspired them specifically, if that's okay.
sure.
So
Yeah,
again,
I'll give
keeping
the
it,
kind of wink, wink,
yeah,
nudge,
wink,
nudge
wink.
answer.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously keeping it spoiler free as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So how about the dog catcher?
The dog catcher
Yeah.
may or may not be inspired by Paw Patrol. Um,
Oh, okay, that makes
so
sense. Yeah.
about
Do you want to kind of say what the story's about?
sure. So the Paw Patrol is about a bunch of dogs that live in Adventure Bay, and this story actually is about a man who wakes up in a cave on a beach in a small town where there are a bunch of dogs everywhere, and the dogs seem to be the only ones that have actual jobs in this town. And there is uh, a mystery that he's trying to solve, but he can't really. But none of the other people are talking to him. I like to think of it as kind of a if Thomas Ligotti wrote Paw Patrol is basically my shorthand pitch for it. If that is what people are interested in, then there's that story.
Hello Hi asks Planet of the Apes with dogs meets The Wicker Man.
A little bit, especially with well, what happens to our man on the beach. So yes, in a way,
Oh,
definitely on the
okay.
front of being things being put inside of other things,
Oh
uh,
God.
but not like that.
You phrased it that way, not me.
Or anything.
Okay, my next favorite, The Shark in Her Belly. You want to say what it's a little bit about and then what inspired it?
Sure. The shark in her belly is told from the perspective of a young child, kind of maybe a more adult narrator looking back at the time when he was a young child, and his mother comes back from this vacation, a girl's vacation, and she is pregnant. The father has not gone on her with her on this vacation.
Oh no.
The mother is pregnant with a kind of a shark. You, something seems very fishy, let's say. uh,
But
and it is inspired in part, maybe inspired in part by the Baby Shark song, which I'm sure is now in everybody's head, especially any parents out there. Um, that was played very much nonstop, especially during the time when my kids were really little. Heard way too much of that song and all of its many knockoff variations that kind of dominated YouTube for a while there.
And then my next one, which I related to a lot as a middle child, the middle sister's new situation.
Yes, this one was one of the maybe the only story in the collection that kind of wasn't directly taken from things that my kids were watching, but was actually more of a deep cut from my own childhood. And it's the take on um, sitcoms, especially like the TGIF style sitcoms that were on Friday nights on ABC, Your Family Matters, your Full Houses, your Step by Step. Premise of the story is this girl who's the middle child in this family, kind of an all-American funny family. Everybody tells jokes. There's one weird kid that lives nearby that sneaks into their house sometimes. She wakes up in her bedroom and she goes to knock on the wall next to her sister's bed, but it's hollow. And she realizes that she's on a set. And she soon finds out that uh, she is maybe not um, part of a real family, and that maybe there is a TV connection to where she comes from. And so that story, was written based on like the sitcoms and stuff. But there was a time when I was watching like Family Matters with the show where the Winslows started off with a lot of kids in the family, not just Eddie and Laura and the other one. There was a middle sister who was written off the show, and they just like acted like this character was gone and they never had another
That's messed up.
kid. And so I decided to like I wanted to do something that was like exploring like, okay, well, what happens to these characters after they are written off a show? So that is what this story is.
See, I watched Full House a lot, and so that's
Mhm.
kind of where I guess the inspiration come from.
A little bit.
And
There's a Kimmy
yeah,
Gibbler-esque character, kind of a Kimmy Gibbler Urkel mashup character,
yeah.
mentioned passing in the story.
I just like one episode that I will never forgive nor forget from Full House is when they go to Disney World or Land, whichever one,
Hmm.
some sort of park, and they're in line for this princess ride, and the little sister cuts in front of the middle sister, and then um they bully the middle sister into letting it happen, and then the little sister is like the 100th person in line, so she gets treated like a princess all day, and the middle child is like, that wasn't fair, like she cut. And the whole episode is just like, you need to like learn to get over it and just be happy for your little sister. And I'm like, but that's not how that works. The little sister cut and that was unfair, and the middle child just got shat on. I still think of that episode and
Yeah.
I'm still horribly offended.
No, we're unlocking all kinds of trauma with this collection. That's
I
my
know. My God, I'm upset. Okay, we got to move on from this. I'm getting a little fired up here. Do you have a favorite story in the collection? Pick amongst your children. The
gosh.
rest will die and one will
Um,
survive.
I mean, I like a lot of them. Obviously, I like all of them in different ways. There are some that are, kind of more like weird horror or kind of straight horror. There's some monster stories in here. There are some like horror romancy type stories that happen in a definitely not a My Little Pony inspired story with Stelkies. I think if I have to pick one that I would want people to read, um, it's the last story in the collection, and you should really read all the way through to get the full impact.
Of course.
The last full story in the collection, not counting the frame story, is the story called "The Big Good Boy," and the premise of this story, it gets a little very twisty, but basically, there are these in the future. There are these rescue workers who are doing virtual reality training, and they're able to kind of enter into different um, sort of emergency type disaster situation and figure out like how to deal with them and how to earthquake, fires, mass shootings, whatever. And in this one training, the guy notices that the disaster that they're trying to prevent is this giant dog, this kaiju sized, Godzilla sized dog.
Was he
Um,
red?
and he may or not have kind of reddish fur, reddish, for keeping it a little bit separate from the source of inspiration there. Um, and it's a story that as it goes on, you're kind of learning a little bit about, um, what is the reality of this world? What is this giant dog? What was its inspiration? How did it end up in this virtual reality program? So it's a little bit of I think I describe it like if Black Mirror did a kaiju episode. Basically, is where that started from.
Nice.
I like that
And
one because it's long and it's got like weird stuff, but it's also got technology run amok, and it's got kind of found family coming together as well. It's not a spoiler, kind of a thematic thing there. So, if I had to pick a favorite, it's all of them. Plus, but also check out the last story.
deal. Okay, last question. What do you hope readers will take away from the collection?
About 216 words or
Okay.
216 pages that they have read. I don't know how many words that is. I think it was like 30,000, maybe 50,000. I think just being able to take a different look at some things that are maybe associated with like fun and your kids and stuff, and being knowing that like you can always take a different look at things and kind of like make it a little weirder, make it weird for you, and that's kind of what I wanted to do with the collection, is like take these things that I was around and my kids were enjoying and find a way to also enjoy it by just making it weird.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Patrick, do you know what time it is?
Is it giveaway time?
It's giveaway time. Yay. Everyone put your drums in chat.
Put those drums
Okay.
in the chat, people.
I'll make sure to add just James to the wheel here. Okay. We got some drums. Yes, thank you for the drums. It validates me. And our winner is, okay, you'll recognize this name. It's the one, the only, the Stoker Award-winning Christy Nogal. Congrats, Christy. So I will be reaching out to you after. Ta-da.
Congratulations, Christy.
There. I'm gonna make sure to write these winners down. There. Okay, so don't worry, you still have one more chance to win if you haven't won yet. So congrats so far to our two winners. And now for probably, besides the giveaways, the favorite part of these online events, we're going to be doing the live reading. And by we, I mean Patrick, because it's your book, Patrick. What
That's
part are you
right.
reading us?
I am going to read the first part of the frame story, actually. So this is the setting the tone, setting up how the children's horror kicks off, and how these kind of twisted versions of the childhood, beloved child programming, how they kind of start, in the in-world explanation for it. So without further ado, I will read The Children's Horror. The children's horror is a certain, solid thing waiting in the dark. Our preparations to leave the school take time, as we have to make sure to stay clear of shadows, especially when the sun's moved higher in the sky, its long rays acting like fertilizer for the outstretched shades extending from our bodies and from every object around us. Ms. Nina holds the back door open, letting purifying sunlight into the hallway, shining back on the classrooms. Watercolor portraits of the children's pets, siblings, and other loved ones remain taped to the wall outside her room. My class hung Crayola-colored maps of the United States, a rainbow of hues for all 50 states. One of the kids, a little boy, Ryan, colored the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in oranges and reds. When he handed me the picture to hang on the wall, I asked, "Why'd you choose those colors for the ocean?" At the time, I wore a natural smile, not forced in the slightest. "It's the river of hell," the boy said. He was clear-eyed, and the words came from his mouth without a stutter or a lisp or any of the other affectations children possess at that age. Listening to a first grader speak of the river of hell was more offensive than if he dropped an F-bomb or tried to grab my breast. There was something adult in his pronunciation. No, not adult, ancient, like something existing beyond the boy with a rat tail and me, his teacher, something beyond Sunny Rivers Elementary School, beyond life on Earth itself. Ada, come on, Miss Nina says, standing with one leg under the flickering fluorescent tube lighting overhead, and her other in the burnt umber sunlight. She's split in two under this dual illumination, two separate halves of two separate people shoved together. I hesitate. Are you sure none of them touched you? I ask. I hate the way my voice sounds. Too soft and scared. Ms. Nina's seen as much of the horror as I have, but she's kept her teacher voice. Strong, soothing. Her smooth palm is turned skeleton white with chalk dust. I swear. I look back through the rectangular glass window on the closed door of my classroom. Somehow, not quite ready to leave them. Before the children's horror, circle time was informed by whispers. First, from the back of the group, one girl in pigtail leaning to the side with her lips too close to the earlobe of another wearing rainbow barrettes. Pop-Tart crumbs from breakfast gave form to whatever secrets the pigtail girl shared willingly. Even as I went through the motions, asking the children to tell me what day of the week it was and selecting a volunteer to place a laminated sun or storm cloud with a cartoon face on the weatherboard, I watched these secrets spread from one child sitting crisscross applesauce to the next. When circle time ended, every child must have received the new good word. From my vantage point, it seemed they'd undergone a religious experience. Their eyes rolled back white. Every single tiny person sitting around me showed eyes the tint and roomy texture of soft-boiled eggs. I set my felt board down, letting the limp cutout figures of Goldilocks and the three bears drift to the carpet. Children? I asked, addressing them as one, not yet grasping how close to the truth this was. Yes, Miss Ada, one of the girls, her hair black and brushed out high like storm clouds, answered. Darla was her name. Is her name. Is something wrong, Darla, with you and... I waved my hand, indicating the whole class, with a sweep of my arm. The children, despite the sickly white appearance of their eyes, followed my movement, like dogs watching their master's hand with a treat. And like the dogs, an unspoken menace resided in the way they tracked me, the suggestion being, if those dogs wanted, they could take the treat and their master's hand with it. No, Miss Ada. This time a boy answered, Jackson H., the most memorable of the four boys named Jackson in my class. Jackson H.'s dad owned a liquor store, sporting goods store, an air conditioning repair service, or something. It made him enough of a town big shot so people in the front office and the teacher's lounge took note when I had his son enrolled in my class. The children kept looking at me, even though it didn't appear that they were looking at me. In addition to their rolled back eyes, they held their faces in a certain way, something beyond daydreaming. Their active, ever-evolving features were kept in check, as though flash frozen. I pulled my legs from under my bottom and stood, too quickly and more than a little unevenly. Pain shot through my thighs and calves. A dull tingling followed, as if my legs had fallen asleep. I steadied myself on the silvered edge of the chalkboard, then glanced at the clock. The numbers showed huge on the clock face for when the kids had their unit on telling time, so there was no mistaking what I saw. Barely 10 minutes had passed since we'd started circle time, and the children had begun changing. All in less than 10 minutes, at least as far as my perception of the change was concerned, but that realization came later in the school day. I straightened my skirt against my legs, rubbing my limbs harder than I might normally in front of the children. It wouldn't do for their teacher to flop on the floor like a fish pulled from the water, though. They remained seated, something they never, ever did. The slightest squeaky fart from a quiet girl or an unexpected announcement from the principal over the loudspeaker used to send my little guys and gals into tittering hysterics. But not the day of the children's horror. We want to show you what we're making. The voice sounded like one of my children. I mean, I'd had my little ones for 6 months, so I knew all of their sweet voices by then. But looking at them, with their necks all tilted back like loosened Pez dispensers, blank features directed at me, I couldn't pick out a single pair of moving lips. And the voice, it was Ryan. It was Darla. It was Jackson H. No, Jackson C. Or W. Or the other C. It was Madeline, Charles, Georgie, Georgina, Rebecca, Molly, Jennifer. It was all of them at once. And none of them. The ringing of the intra-classroom telephone provided a shrill, shrieking lifeline, pulling me free from murky uncertainty. I forced myself free from the children's blank, immobile faces and walked across the room to grab the tan-corded phone hung by the coat closet. Picked up the receiver and pressed it to my ear. A cool touch of molded plastic offered a momentary soothing. I hadn't understood how hot it was, how hot I was, but a glance revealed sweat-soaked, already yellowing armpits on my short-sleeved white blouse top. Hello? How are your children? Ms. Nina. My relief at her voice was unlike anything I'd experienced, like I'd run a marathon and come crashing across the finish line, ready for the tinfoil blanket, water, and rub-down. It must have manifested in a sigh or sharp intake of breath or something, because Ms. Nina chuckled on the other end of the line. That good, huh? Ms. Nina talked to her fellow teachers like some wily veteran police officer or frontline soldier, providing gallows humor to go with her homespun wisdom. I found myself turning further from the children in their circle. Once I faced the classroom door, I let the cord wrap around my arm like a malnourished snake. I cupped a hand over the speaker before I spoke again. Things are a tad different this morning. Goddamn right, I gasped. Miss Nina. Sure, there was a time and a place for a potty mouth, but Miss Nina had her kids in circle time as well, same as all of us teachers on the hall. We all shared similar lesson plans. It didn't seem right to curse in front of the children. Oh, don't worry, she said. My kids have gone. Where? Some walked out of the classroom, right out the door. A few others went into the bathroom and jimmied themselves up into the vents. You'll catch them rattling around up there if you listen long enough. As if on cue, a loud bang sounded above me, like the report of a pistol or a tiny pair of Keds kicking the interior of the air conditioning vents in our old building. Have you talked to any of the other teachers? No, doll, Miss Nina said in a way that reminded me of Paul Newman, leaning against a brick wall with a toothpick balanced on his perfect teeth. I tried every class in our hallway. Nobody else is home. Do you want to come here? I asked. I pressed my forehead against the window above the door. We'd placed shredded cotton ball pieces on the glass, aiming for a hopeful message, encouraging the children to reach for the sky. How many of them you got in there? I knew what she was referring to, who she was referring to. I turned slow and steady, letting my flats grind against the crayon-encrusted carpet. I got set to give her a number. I figured something like 15, 22 if everyone showed up for school on the day, and it appeared that everyone was present the way they'd crowded around me before. Oh, there's one. One child stood behind me, waiting for me to finish my call and return my attention to them. I looked around, trying to determine if I could spot a wayward sneaker or a rainbow bubblegum barrette, hear giggling in whispers, or find some other telltale sign of children hiding and doing a terrible job of it. There was nothing. There was only the child, soft-cheeked, short-haired, eyes rolled back white, lips moist and parted to reveal tiny chiclet-sized teeth. The skin was a mottled mash of flavors, skin tones bubbling under the surface like the bulbous excretions in a lava lamp. The child was all of the children in my class, but also none of them. Its voice sounded in my head again. We are the children's horror. Ms. Nina opened the door to my classroom and pulled me into the hallway. I held back the vomit long enough so it sprayed the cotton ball clouds on the door and dripped down the glass and polished teak. Pressed against the opposite wall, I watched my stick inching down the door before it splattered onto the ground. The children's horror met my fevered gaze. stretching up to press its elongated face against the glass. As it grinned at us, one face, two faces, all of my children's faces appeared tiny and red, like some outbreak of acne across its composite face. These tiny faces, like pustules, grew bigger, 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 and then pop. Too traumatized to absorb the empty, silent hallways and the too easy retreat we'd made, Ms. Nina and I barricaded ourselves in the teacher's lounge, pushing the plaid patterned couch and chair against the door. The furniture looked like something out of my parents' basement and stank of it too. Fabric soaked with cigarette smoke so you'd convince yourself your hands would come away nicotine yellow just from being near it. Ms. Nina put her hand on my cheek, a softer touch than she'd provided in the hallway where she'd backhanded the incoherent screams out of me. She'd hit me so hard it had opened up a cut on my cheek. Blood still dribbled onto my blouse. Sorry, hun. Miss Nina switched to her teacher's voice once we'd settled in the lounge. Like she needed some child to teach, but instead had to settle for me, her younger colleague. I didn't fight, though. There was a comfort to it. What are we going to do? I asked. In response, she held up the black phone hanging beside the staff fridge. We try this again. The last few times I missed a dial tone. I didn't dare ask what she'd heard instead. As it stood, my lip was trembling and I wanted to stop. I wanted to cope with the end of the world, because that's damn sure what it felt like, with the same relaxed nonchalance as Miss Nina. She raised her eyebrow like she'd read my mind and was now worried I'd crack under the pressure. I lowered my gaze and took in her hand, puffy and red from where she'd struck me earlier. She turned and opened the fridge door, letting its pale yellow glow out into the lounge. She pulled out sack lunch after sack lunch, each belonging to one of our missing colleagues. Miss Nina pulled about 5 bags before she said, "Well, you want to help or what? Let's check what we can eat here, or save for later." "Oh, okay." I moved to the fridge. The crackle of the intercom stopped me in my tracks. Miss Nina straightened at the sound, closing the fridge at the same time. I caught a glimpse of the light before it blinked away. I swore I glimpsed the afterimage of eyes glowing from somewhere past the egg salads and the janitor's leftover birthday cake as the door slammed closed. "Attention, boys, girls, and teachers. Will everyone please come to the auditorium for a special treat?" It was our principal, Stan Gilhooly. The older kids called him the Gill Monster. He was one of those disciplinarian types, real ballbuster even at the elementary level. Hearing the words special treat spoken by Principal Gilhooly should have told us something was amiss right away. Hell, hearing him refer to the children as boys and girls and not students didn't sit right either. Miss Nina must have felt the same. She crossed her arms over her chest and glared at the intercom tucked away in the corner by the ceiling, like she'd glanced up and found a wasp's nest hanging there defiant. "Well, what is it?" she asked, speaking as though Gilhooly stood in the room with us. You've got to come to the auditorium. No spoiling my surprise." "Children?" I asked without thinking, bringing my hand to my mouth as though I could force the word back. Another pause on the intercom, then the loud whine of feedback masked the moans and demonic cries of the damned. When Principal Gilhooly spoke again, he sounded like a defeated, broken man, and we soon learned how broken. "Oh, God, they took my head. My head. Why am I still alive? Why? Let me die again. Why do I feel everything? They've got their little devil's hands moving my mouth, eyes. They're pulling. I'm not a puppet." Loud, phlegmy choking followed. Then the falsely cheerful children's version of Gilhooly's voice regained control. "Whoopsie doopsie," they said. "Come on, ladies. Don't make me come in there and drag you out." The tiny quarter-inch sized holes on the intercom speaker filled with a pale pink substance. Like looking at a pointillist painting, I had to step back from the dots to understand what we were being shown, but as flesh, blood, and malleable bone leaked through, and along with eyes, teeth, and tongue, we understood. There was Principal Gilhooly making good on his promise to come and get us. Children's horror, Miss Nina said, while our boss's mincemeat head dribbled to the floor. This isn't possible, I said, not because I believed it, but because I wished more than anything that what I said was true. I wanted my eyes to open, a feverish chill passing through my body. I wanted this all to be a dream, a nightmare. Hell, I'd settle for it being a final distorted vision on my deathbed. Some explanations making some rational sense. The quivering lumps of flesh at our feet, reaching for each other and growing each time they touched, told a different story, giving reason beyond reason. A knocking on the door followed. I looked at Miss Nina and she looked back at me. She shrugged like, "What are you gonna do, kid?" I let her take my hand and lead me to the teacher's lounge door. We pulled away the furniture blocking our way. Then she turned the knob and pulled open the door, exposing us to whatever waited in the hall. No one, no one waited for us. We headed to the auditorium all the same, because we didn't know where else to go. The children, my children, Ms. Nina's, and the other class's children, filled the seats in the old auditorium. So many tiny faces and tiny bodies filled the folded down theater chairs in row after row. Their legs kicked the air, coming up shy of the seat backs ahead. When the double doors leading into the theater space slammed behind us, we peered through the darkness, examining rows lit by track lighting on the floor. The children's two big chairs creaked and whined as their bodies wriggled to hold the seats down. As Nina and I made our way to the main aisle, we kept our eyes straight ahead. I didn't want to look to the side and catch a glimpse of one of my children. I didn't want to watch their faces melting or bubbling, or maybe worse, not changed at all, but accepting of the madness in which we landed. A gray and black TV cart sat on the lip of the stage, centered so the audience got a decent view of whatever appeared on the screen, no matter where they sat. The TV resting atop the cart with a black luggage strap keeping it in place was one of those huge 1980s Magnavox sets, a beast of a machine with a grayed out screen as thick as a block of ice. But that you could drop on someone's head and make a real mess of them in doing so. TV was off with the power light presenting a dull autumnal orange. We stopped at the front row, shy of the stage. No one made a sound behind or around us. Then the children spoke to us telepathically, a chorus of cherubic voices in our heads again. "We need you to turn on our shows." On testing days, we'd bring the kids into the auditorium and play cartoons for them. Nothing with any real educational value, no Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers, but the usual Saturday morning or after-school dreck. Gilhooly hated it, but we always fought to preserve this twice-annual respite for our kids. "They work so hard," one of us would always say. "Don't they deserve a break? Some fun?" Gilhooly would grunt and wave us off, never offering his true opinion, but not willing to put up a fight either. Miss Nina dropped my hand and left me on the floor. She walked up the steps and onto the stage. Her hand reached for the power knob. She twisted it. Ow! She pulled her hand back, then brought fingertips to her lips, like she'd gotten stung or stabbed. When she returned to the front of the stage, she took my hand again. It led me to the empty row in the back. We sat behind the children, settling into our seats and finding them the right fit, maybe even a little too snug. I looked at Miss Nina's hand, her fingertip bleeding onto the mahogany armrest. "You okay?" I whispered. The children's psychic shushing echoed like a raging hurricane in my skull. My eyes watered as my eardrums throbbed ripe enough to burst. Miss Nina shook her head, like I'd disappointed her, like I'd misunderstood something fundamental that'd make all the difference in the outcome of our day. My cheeks flushed red and I turned back to the stage. The TV's glow cast a blanket of soft light across the front rows of the audience. The children stared in awe at the machine. An image appeared on screen, something familiar, but different than what I remembered from my childhood and the glimpses my students gave me of their television favorites. And then the shows played. And that is the opening.
Yay! We had some comments. Grace was laughing of there being 4 Jacksons. I guess very
Yeah.
accurate.
And
Um,
it's spelled Jaxon
yeah.
for real effect there.
And she also says creepy kids, one of her favorite tropes for sure.
There are
Uh,
a lot of creepy kids in this collection.
yep. Christy said super creepy. I said the children have obviously been drinking their demonic Ovaltine, which I thought
Yeah,
was very funny.
I should have gotten more laughs and get more laughs in the chat.
I know, but I just wanted that to be acknowledged. Okay, so we have our last giveaway, drums in chat. So I have been taking the winners out. So technically, there's only 3 people who haven't won a book yet. So you do have a 1 in 3 chance of winning a book. So it's pretty good. So let me get this. Drums in chat. All right. It's Grace, Daily. Dally? Grace, congrats, Daily. Thank you. Congrats. You also win a copy. I will be reaching out after the event. And now, I know we're a little over time, but I didn't
Sorry,
know.
the
Oh,
reading
that's
went a little
okay.
longer. I practiced and it always goes
I
longer.
asked you a lot of questions too. I was really digging in, but I don't want to bereft our audience. So, do you have any questions, dearest audience, for our wonderful Patrick Barb? Type them in chat. I will start. Patrick, what are you working on now?
I am currently this project was announced a couple weeks ago, I think. I am working on a novella for the Killer VHS line at Shortwave Publishing.
Ooh.
It's a novella called Night of the Witch Hunter. It is a late '90s set high school story, goth girl who's outcast in this New England town. Um, knows that her ancestor was a witch who was killed. Um, back in the colonial times, and she tries to contact her ancestor, but instead brings this witch hunter to her present, and he is looking to like clean up the town, make it more adhere to his puritanical views, while also being into like demonic powers and witchcraft himself. So it's been fun. I am just finishing up the draft, and then I'll be working with Alan over at Shortwave on getting that ready for folks in spring 2025.
Ooh, exciting.
I hope so.
Um, Christy asks, I wonder if your kids like horror and if you let them read your stuff.
I I don't have anything yet that they are kind of able to be a fan of. They like scary things on YouTube. They like jump scare videos, and they like all those like Five Nights at Freddy's games and Rainbow Friends and all these other things. And my oldest has gotten into like reading some like creepy pasta kind of stuff. So they're getting into it a little bit, but they're still like terrified. I have a DVD copy of Child's Play and Child's Play 3 that came with like a little Chucky doll inside.
Yeah.
And I have to hide that because they're just terrified of Chucky, which I also was when I was a kid. It runs in the family, and like I was terrified of horror movies, anything scary for the longest time. It wasn't until I think maybe like end of middle school or high school that I finally was like, hey, I like being scared. And so then like that led to where we are today. So
Uh,
not yet, but maybe soon.
Grace has a spicy question. I was told to ask a spicy one. That is true. Do you have a least favorite horror book or movie, and what do you hate about it?
Hmm. I don't know about books necessarily. I'm very forgiving of like all the media that I consume. I kind of find merit in the schlock, and I find merit in like some of the things. Um, I mean, when I was a kid, I told this story in an essay, but I was obsessed with Hansel and Gretel for a while. My family had this golden book copy of the story of Hansel and Gretel, and I was probably like 3 years old, and my mom was taking me to our local grocery store. And in the cart, young Patrick, a babe,
Baby
in
Patrick. Yeah.
swaddling clothes, and there's this older woman in front of us. And I said, "Look, mommy, there's the witch from Hansel and Gretel." And no filter, just said it. Just I was like, "There she is." She got out of the book and she's there. And rather than be like, "Oh, how funny," that's apparently this woman turned around and cursed out my mom, not disproving my theory that she
Yeah.
was from Hansel and Gretel. But what that meant was when I came home, I hated the book and I didn't want to see it. And I threw it in my parents' closet, like, get this out. I was a very dramatic 3-year-old, apparently. And for a while, I would like it would show up as I was growing up, and just out of habit, I'd be like, toss it back in the closet. Don't want anything to do with it. So if I had to hate one, it might be that one. As far as like a horror movie I hate, I don't know. I don't know that I hate any of them. I have watched a lot of bad ones. I watched like you get on Tubi and you can find all kinds of just like absolute garbage. Um, but I can sometimes find some merit in it, either just like it being silly or something. Um, I mean, I probably will look back on some of like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like that whole like Saw Hostel run, and like those are probably not as like good as maybe I thought originally, kind of like the edgelordy in retrospect. But that's probably about it. And everything else, I'm like, if I don't watch it, that usually it's the stuff I don't watch. I'm like, I just know ahead of time. I'm like, I'm not gonna vibe with this. Either in like the terms of like, I really like this, or like, this is terrible. I also really like this. So sorry, I can't answer that one exactly.
We seem to have a lot of Chucky PTSD going on because she also says, "Oh my God, I was scared of Chucky too. My uncle had a Chucky doll he used to hide around his house whenever the family was over."
Yeah,
And
see, we had a my buddy doll, which was the inspiration for Chucky,
yeah,
and my brother had it, and my little brother, who's 2 years younger than me, not really like a big horror guy at all, but he knew that I was scared of everything, and we had bunk beds. He would climb up and put the doll under the sheets. So when I pulled back the sheets, there it was, and then we would fight because that's what you do when you're brothers. My boys do it now. Um, that would terrify me. I hated that thing so much. But I've since gotten over it, and I like the Chucky films are good. I hear the TV show's good too. If I ever have a moment, I might check it out. But you know, and Brad Dourif is fantastic, one of our great actors.
yeah, I remember my dad let us watch Child's Play when we were like super young. I don't even remember watching it. I just remember like then being terrified of redheaded dolls for a while. So it's like the PTSD is real for sure.
Yeah, like it certainly didn't. He certainly didn't do you redheads
I
any
know.
favors either. Like just it it becomes so campy. After like the first one was actually pretty scary. Like as they move into like part 2 and 3, and
Yeah, they made him more sassy than like scary.
yeah, I mean that's the fate of any kind of wisecracking. Like you can't murder people a bunch and say funny things and not like have the balance eventually shift in the wrong way where it's like you're just like doing like the writer's old stand-up material. Basically, you're just giving it to this little doll who's like carrying a knife and like making bad puns.
Oh, she says, yeah, the uncle would put it in the sheets too.
Gotta
God,
cover,
yeah,
gotta cover.
PTSD everywhere. Okay, so no more questions. Do you have any last words, P Barb?
Yeah, I'll just say pick up if you haven't pre-ordered the children's horror cursed episodes for doomed adult. It is out on Tuesday from Northern Republic Press. It's going to be in paperback, it's going to be an ebook. It's available for pre-order in both formats on Amazon and should be in other formats soon. It's going to be on Ingram, so after bookstore to order it too. Why not? Have fun. And then I've got a few other projects in the pipeline. The anthology I'm editing, and One Day We Will Die, Strange Stories Inspired by the Music of Neutral Milk Hotel, is out in November. One of the authors, Christy Nogle, is here with us as well. Has a fantastic story in the anthology. I'm really excited. My first time being an editor.
Congrats.
We'll talk about that more in November, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's coming from Hungry Shadow Press. And then, all my online places are in the chat. So if you're not following me, give me a follow, say hi, introduce yourself, and that's all I got.
Yeah. And if you end up wanting to share this video with friends or family, I included my YouTube channel link there. So if you copy that, this will eventually be up. You can share it and tell people to check it out and support P. Barb's upcoming collection. That's really exciting.
Tell all the people who weren't here and
Yeah.
watch it later that you were here and much cooler than them. So,
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank
right.
you so much, everyone, for coming out. This has been so lovely, and congrats, P. Barb, for the amazing collection coming out in a few days. Always
Thanks,
prolific in
all.
your writing, super exciting. And yeah, thank you, everyone, and I hope the rest of your Saturday night is amazing. Bye.
Good night, everyone.